Hello Internet! Welcome to our new English-speaking format channel. My name is Dennis. Today's project is this marble table lamp. Let's get started. When you drill marble, you'll be left with a bunch of these cylinders. So I decided to make use of them. I have always been fascinated by how stone of certain thickness disperses light. With this small dimensions table lamp, obvious choice. So, to the point, let's start with CNC. We have two parts made out of marble. Here's the lampshade. Three operations here: facing, pocket, and grooving. Here the cutter removes most of material, leaving a wall 3 mm thick. So feeds and speeds are very gentle, 0.3 mm per pass. Also, I have to make sure that marble blank have no any imperfections, such as cracks or cavities. Also, not every stone is suitable for such a product. The structure must be as uniform as possible. This Tassos marble is one of the best for the job. Its structure allows you to make very fine details without losing any strength. Done with pocket and changing cutter for grooving operations. This is tricky part for me because the groove depth must be accurate up to 0.1 mm to fit well on the fixing ring. Tight enough not to wobble, but loose enough not to break the part while replacing light bulb. I had to make a few of this to find this sweet spot, and by few I mean a lot. Okay, finished with this part, back to CNC. Second part is bottom stand. Feeds and speeds are much more rough this time. 3 mm for pass depth and 8 mm for step over. This is bottom part of the bottom part. I'm making a pocket 5 mm in depth in the center almost all over the entire part, leaving a rim 5 mm thick at the edge for stability on uneven surfaces, also for wiring. You can see this pocket technique on kitchen plates, for example. Also on this side, a central hole for standing rod, this small one for wiring fixture, and cutting the part out. Here is a nice trick here. I'm not cutting out all the way through in order not to chip an edge. So when I flip the part, I don't have to remove a lot of material in order to get rid of nasty chipped corners. And here is another one tip for easy and fast clamping of the workpiece exactly in the center. I'm milling a pocket in PVC leftovers about 0.2 mm less than the workpiece diameter. PVC is springy enough to lock my part tightly, but you have to be careful with your feeds and speeds. As long as you put reasonable amount of force into this setup, you'll be fine. As you can see, I'm facing the part, also removing what I didn't cut in previous operations, leaving neat edges. Last operation, making a pocket for fixing nut. Work on marble is finished so far, moving to the lathe. I must mention that I'm not a professional lathe operator. I'm constantly learning, but I have enough experience to make this simple part. Here I have a lot of material to remove because it's the only workpiece diameter which I have at the moment, and it's just enough for two parts, the lampshade mount and the bottom mount. Everything is pretty simple here. Since the parts are the same diameter, I do everything from one setup. Several rough passes to remove most of material. I leave 0.1 mm from the final diameter for the finishing pass and polishing. Next, I drill a central hole for the connecting rod and wiring, also machine the counterpart for the lampshade, and cut off both parts. And here I made a mistake, forgetting to cut a groove for the ring between the lampshade and its mount. As I didn't want to damage the parts by clamping them into a large chuck, and I didn't want to make any additional cover to protect them, I decided to fix this problem in a small lathe. Its chuck doesn't have such forces and most likely will not scratch the surface of the parts. So here I am fixing my mistake. This little guy is very old and looks like a toy, but he is still capable of small precise works like this. Troubleshooting done. Next, I need to drill small holes and cut threads for attaching the bulb holder. I do it on a piece of marble, since its surface is grainy like sandpaper, and I don't need to additionally fix the part, fearing the drill will bite into material and the part will turn. Here I am deburring and cutting M3 metric threads, and important part is to check that everything fits. Next part, fixing nut. It serves to connect the marble stand and the rod. I need to cut M6 thread and polish it. As for polishing, the process is quite simple and straightforward. So I start from 120 grit sandpaper. Switch to 180, 240, 320. Those steps are important and I have to make sure that each next number completely removes marks of the previous one. Next I switch straight to 800 and final step, cotton cloth with metal polishing paste. Move on to the next part. Here I fix the part by eye, since no indicator needed for polishing. Also I need to cut the thread for the connecting rod. It is worth saying that I do not recommend this by hand method of threading. It is better using the tail stalk to give the cutting direction for the tap. I am impatient and it's easy for me to replace the part if I break the tap. As for polishing, the procedure is the same as I did earlier, so fast forward and move on to the next part. Next is the rod that connects the lamp to the stand. Here I also need to cut threads, polish, and turning it to the required size before threading. Let's proceed to the intermediate assembly. I need to glue the fixing nut to the stand. For this, I need to degrease parts to be glued. I use alcohol for this because it doesn't leave any marks on white marble. Glue I use is 10x glass. It's two-component adhesive, especially for gluing white stones. Most adhesives on the market leave greasy marks after drying, which cannot be removed by anything as they are absorbed into the surface of the stone. And it's very clearly visible on the white stones. No such problem with this one. Some glue tips. Read the manufacturer's instructions carefully. In this case, the proportions of glue are 1 to 1, but in other glues they may differ. Make sure using different scoops for component A and component B. Otherwise, one day you will find that the glue in the jar is frozen solid. Best case is to use disposable. Also important is the curing time of the adhesive. There are glues that harden in minutes, so you need to be sure that there is enough time to install the parts in their place. Also, I need to remove excess glue as soon as possible, since when polishing it will clog the tool. I'm finished here, and while the glue dries, I'll do the wiring. I use G4 socket for light bulb. It's a standard LED bulb and the smallest I could find. I need to connect the wires from the socket to those that go to the base of the lamp. I have always considered soldering the most reliable connection, as well as requiring little space. For insulation, I use heat shrink tubes. The work is painstaking, but must be done carefully and without haste. First, I twist one end of the wire around the other. I need to make sure that none of the wires sticks out, otherwise, after soldering, it will turn into a needle that will pierce the heat shrink and short the wires. Second, a few drops of flux and solder. Last step to put on the heat shrink, and that's it for now. Back to the polishing, this time marble. For fixing the lampshade, I used a wooden block machined into the shape of cone. So you just put the part on the cone and it fixes itself in a certain position. For polishing, I also use sandpaper, only special for marble. But the regular one will do the job just fine. The only difference is durability. I have more steps here. I start with 40 grit, then switch to 80, 120, 180, 220, 400, 600 and 800. I also pay more attention to passages up to number 400. If there are traces of one of these passages left, I will not be able to remove them with the following passes, and I will have to start all over again. The time between numbers also gets shorter with each next step, as the sandpaper has to remove less and less material. So I'm practically only lightly touching the material with the last number. I finish with a cotton polishing pad with diamond polishing paste to give a mirror shine. Also, this step allows the marble to let through more light, be more transparent. The same story with the stand, only now I use a grinder. And as it turned out, the fixing nut could not be polished last time. Now I'm repolishing it, glued into stone. But practice makes perfect, right? Final assembly. First, I need to glue the dowel for attaching the wires. I use two-component glue like last time, only this time it freezes very quickly. Degreased, applied glue, inserted dowel, done. It takes a few minutes for the glue to harden, so while I assemble the rest. I screw the central rod to the lampshade holder using Loctite for thread sealing. Then install the retaining ring, pass the wires through the rod, and fix the lamp socket with two screws, also using thread sealer. Further, the assembly process explains itself, so I'm done commenting on the obvious. And now meet our expert from the Quality and Comfort Control Department. Nothing, even the slightest imperfection, will not pass by these eyes. Approved this time. Thank you for watching.